At Say Hi to the Future, we believe exploring, instilling, inspiring, and nurturing human ingenuity is a leadership imperative. It must be sought and can be honed in every leader. I'm your host, Saquib Vali. Explorers Say Hi to the Future, the fast-growing community highlighting the human side of ingenuity. Our guest today is Shakir Moin, Chief of Marketing, Coca-Cola North America, a career that has taken Shakir far and wide and varying assignments in Asia Pacific and North America. Right before this current assignment, Shakir served as the CEO of Costa Coffee. Welcome, Shakir, and thank you for taking time out of your effervescent schedule.
That's the first time I heard this, Saquib. I'm going to steal the effervescent schedule line. And thank you for having me. I was so happy to join you.
So, Shakir, let's let our listeners hear in your voice how you wish to introduce yourself to them. And as you do, please do demystify things our listeners might get wrong about generally the beverage industry.
So how do I introduce myself? First of all, which is very important to me, I am a husband and a father. I have a daughter who is 14 and a son who's turning 11 tomorrow. So an exciting week at our home. I'm originally from Pakistan. I was born there, studied over there, and now with the Coca-Cola company for almost 27 years. This is my 11th country living and working for Coke. As a professional, I've worked in all sorts of assignments in general management, strategy, marketing. Marketing was my first love and still is my first love. Continued with that. And for the last 14 months, I've been in my current role as chief of marketing for North America. Here's the interesting thing about beverages. And normally when I introduce myself to people, they say, well, you have the easiest job. Everyone drinks a Coke. And it's true. But we also sell juices, and we have a beautiful nutrition portfolio with milk called Fairlife and Core Power, energy drinks, water. So there's a fairly wide portfolio of brands. Our opportunity is that we don't need to create demand. There are 330 million people in the US who are going to wake up thirsty, who are going to go to bed probably thirsty, and they're going to probably have 8 beverages a day. The opportunity, therefore, for us is how do you capture that demand with the right product and the right proposition at the right moment? So it is a tough job in a sense that we are trying to work with existing human behavior, but interjecting it with a good solution at the right moments.
Very, very interesting. I love how you framed it. You don't need to create demand. You just need to be present with the right product for the right occasion. That's nicely said. So, Shakir, there's a lot of fizz around the go-to-market for global brands like Coke, like with terms like think global, act local, and all that stuff. But for someone whose business model depends on how this tension between global look and local insights plays out, let our listeners know how Coke finds its voice and gets it right more often than other global brands.
Now having done for 27 years, and I have to say at different points of my career, I was very polarized on my thinking. There was a moment when I believed that everything localized was great, and there was moments when I believed that everything global could be a great idea because it has scale. And thankfully, after hard knocks, I've learned that I think finding that right balance is advantageous. And here's the reason why. If everything is localized, we are a local brand in a local country. If everything is globalized, then we probably lose the relevance around hitting the nerves and hitting the hearts with the idea of a brand. Our global footprint allows us to cherry pick the best ideas and bring them faster to the market. So I'll give you an example. I think pretty much every single marketer would have seen this case study out of Coke where we put names on the front of the package. Mm-hmm. That idea originally came out of Australia. Now, if none of the marketers would have taken it and said, well, that's an Aussie idea and it works in Australia, and we don't want to do anything to do with that, it would have been a massive miss on value creation. And I think pretty much every Coke country ended up launching that idea on their own. Nobody pushed them to do this because it was such a human idea. It worked in every single country. I did this in multiple markets when I was working on the idea and the brand. But that was our competitive advantage. That was our ability to bring best ideas from different places into a local market. But equally, we are very, very deep on understanding our consumers locally. Because yes, there are differences between consumers. And therefore, if you're not clear on understanding on that consumers, I don't know which idea to pick to connect with an opportunity or a solution that may be in play for my market. So I think Coke does it really well, and as you rightly said, on most days. And sometimes we make mistakes, like everyone else. But on most days, we get that right balance between picking up best thinking from different parts of the world, as well as being very, very locally centric.
And I'm completely with you. As somebody who's been, so interested in how Coke does things, you're absolutely right. Coke gets it right, like you said, most of the time, and which is why it's been creating amazing amount of value. Take me into the minds of the people that are your team members. When you say get the balance right, what's your process? I think one of the things you said just while we were having this conversation before the podcast kind of started was something around humanity. So is there a lever that helps you connect the global look and feel with the local insights? Like what's your link between the two? If you can just elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah. So we working on any of the brands, as we start looking at the brand, either in terms of a planning phase, or if you're working on a specific campaign or a specific issue that we want to address, the starting point always is the humanity. What is the a problem we're trying to solve? Is there an issue in the lives of consumers where we could be more relevant and we can help solve it? Or an opportunity, they may not know that it exists, and we bring that idea or that solution to our potential consumers because they're not consumers yet. So that's the singular starting point. We go deep inside that. Once we mine that insight and say, well, that's a problem we're trying to solve, then generally the first starting point is, has anybody found a solution to that particular problem? And our opportunity within Coke is a very network organization. So our team, for example, my team can reach out to their counterparts in different parts of the world and essentially ask for it. We have databases which we go and look for it before we figure out, does it need to be created locally? And then we work from there. Sometimes there's an idea that someone did, and you find the right articulation of that, or you need to start from scratch. Saquib, here's an example I want to give you. In 2012, I was based out of Thailand, and Myanmar had just opened up, or was about to open up. And we wanted to be one of the first brands to be in Myanmar as the country was opening up. It was super exciting times. As a Coke person, I was very excited because there are only few countries where Coke doesn't sell. And those are the markets where the US government doesn't have a trading relation. So when I first went to Yangon, there were no agencies. There were no research. There's nobody to call and say, well, help me understand the market. So we had to go inside people's homes to understand how do people live, and what do they drink, and what do they eat, and do they know something called Coca-Cola, and all of those, right? And then you can imagine it's a high-profile entry. A lot of people had a point of view internally on what we want to say about Coca-Cola. Once we figured out that obviously we want to go there, we figured out what is the right proposition to build in terms of a package and the price point and all the commercial elements. What is the brand idea? And the solution, the answer to this was 1886 Atlanta, the first time Coke came into the market. Wow. So we went back into the archives to understand, in a totally virgin market, what was the message that Coke put out and why? And is it still relevant? And we essentially, to cut the long story short, the proposition was delicious and refreshing. We literally took that idea, we did a little bit of testing, put that out, and that was how we entered Myanmar. The campaign for Myanmar was campaign in Atlanta in 1886 or 1889, when the first communication on Coke came out, which talked about delicious and being delicious and refreshing.
That is outstanding. And having that heritage, I personally did go into the world of Coke, and that museum is just absolutely fantastic. So I can just imagine the amount of wealth of insights you've got. I also did, sort of enter the vault where all the secret recipes are. Anyhow, Shakir, let's double click on finding your voice in a very diverse geography like North America. What challenges does Coke face? And I'm not just speaking in terms of any one piece of copy, or, I'm talking more in terms of more broadly on the process of innovation and crafting memorable campaigns.
Yeah, I think that the challenge that I think we face is, first of all, one of the things, Saquib, we have done is during COVID, we did take a step back and said that would things change? And a simple statistic is the adoption of digital in the US specifically. What happened in about 18 months had taken almost more than a decade in the period before. So massively consumer behavior evolved during COVID. And we looked at it and we said, well, consumers our consumers have changed and we haven't, and we got to transform ourselves significantly. So we went under a massive marketing transformation, which we're still undergoing, which recompassed ourselves in helping us think very differently around consumers. And it's beyond digital. Obviously, digital is critical enabler, but it's looking at habits. Habits have evolved. I'll give you an example. Diet Coke is one of our prize brands here in the US. The Diet Coke consumption was anchored in a very memorable 11 o'clock break. It used to be in the morning, sometime before lunch. People would take a Diet Coke break at 11 o'clock. That break has now morphed, and it used to be 11 o'clock at office or at work. Now the same break is 3 p.m. at work because of how the behaviors have changed and put through. So going back to the question on challenges, the challenge is constantly understanding how humanity has evolved, and in some cases constantly evolving. And against that, how do we bring the right relevance, not only in terms of campaigns, but the products, the solutions that we can bring to our consumers. One challenge in the US is inflation has been high, or has been high in the last couple of years. And now, as the various stimuli are no longer there, people are struggling in some cases to meet their day-to-day demands of groceries. And how do we need to step in and think differently to provide a better solution to those people who are struggling to bring basic necessities at home? So I think that's where our mindset has been, which is we know that humanity has evolved. We need to evolve, hopefully faster than where people are, but being at the edge and the cusp of it to make sure that we're finding those moments and opportunities, and being truly solution oriented for our consumers is, I think, our single biggest challenge.
So Shakir, one of the major challenges that I am thinking through is around obesity and diabetes. For a company like Coke, which is all about sugary, fizzy drinks, how does that filter into your innovation process, or does it even filter in at all?
It filters in quite significantly, Saquib. Since now, I think 2005, Coke literally created the category or segment of zero-calorie products. It started with Coca-Cola Zero and has gone through pretty much our entire portfolio. And that was with this singular objective of ensuring that people who are concerned about sugar, either because of a challenge that they have or because of a watch out, or ensuring that we are being the right part of the calorie consumption in a day part, we need to provide the right choices to consumers. So the zero calorie segment now is significant for us, and it's now available in most of our beverage segments. So it's in sparkling beverages, so Coke, Sprite, Fanta, is there in juices, is there in energy drinks, and it continues to grow. The other thing that has happened over the last now since 2005, so 18 years later, 19 years later, is our ability to create really good tasting products. So historically, consumers sometimes thought that they were compromising on the taste of the product because of the taste of the sweeteners that were being used. But now, thankfully, the capability that our team has built over the years is delivering really, really good tasting products. So we're not letting consumers compromise on their choices to come through. And the third bit, Saquib, is that from our lens, our current CEO, James Quincy, had a vision of becoming a total beverage company. This was, again, very squarely from a lens that people also drink milk at breakfast. And can we have a milk? And we have a beautiful business with Fairlife. We have Core Power, which is a high protein recovery milk solution. We have a really, really good hydration or water portfolio. Right now, wearing this jacket with Smart Water, which is one of our prize brands. So, as I said right at the beginning, that I think our opportunity that we continue to see is to provide the best choices for our consumers against the needs that they would have. And within that, obviously ensuring that the products are delivering to their needs. A lot of people do like sugar products, and they are choiceful about how they drink them. We have a great portfolio, equally with zero products, equally with other products like milk and juices and water as well.
Cool. So let's maneuver this a little, which is I need to get into the leadership mind of Shakir, right? And that is at Say Hi to the Future, where HI stands for human ingenuity. We are all about ingenious thinking, ingenious leaders, and ingenious designers, right? And Coke has a mix of all three. You've got amazing campaigns, consumers that love the product. So there's clearly a lot of ingenious thought that goes into developing them. You are one of the best leadership development companies. So create amazing leaders, so ingenious leaders, and obviously the design of Coke is, globally known. So let me ask you, give me your take on ingenuity, and especially the human side of ingenuity. Where has it worked well? Where has it not? What have you learned? Tell me a bit more.
So, Saquib, what I love about the high is the H part of it. It's the human. I think that makes all the difference. If I was to share my objectives for this year with you publicly, I have 5 objectives. My number one objective is people. Every time I speak to our team, every time I look at our plans, every time I'm looking at forward thinking, then the starting point is our people. Because my fundamental belief is that world-class people build world-class brands. And it's not the other way around. World-class brands do not build world-class people. It's a simple idea, but it's not, I don't see it manifested very often in many places. So I still think it seems to be an idea that escapes humanity. So I love how you have that sense on not ingenuity, but on human ingenuity. So that's the starting point around all of this. Where it works for me, Saquib, is I think, as part of the various assignments that I did, I worked in China for about 5 years. And China was almost going back to university. It was one of the blessings to actually live and work in China, because the way the Chinese think and work is very different from the rest of the world. And I learned this idea of 10x thinking in China, which is to become ingenious, you need to think very boldly. Otherwise, we fall into incrementalism. So I'm going to equally be brutally honest around things that didn't work or hasn't worked. As an example, sometimes we do flavor innovations, adding a flavor into a particular beverage. And yes, it brings delight and it's exciting, but is it going to massively move the needle on the business? And the answer is no. And I think that the push that we have internally is that it takes the same amount of brain cells to think 10% or 10x. Why not think 10x? Because at the moment you start to think 10x, it opens a whole lot of possibilities and what we call, a whole lot of wicked problems. Big problems, big solutions. The ingenuity bit is linked, at least from our case, around this notion of 10x thinking. And if you're not putting enough of our time and resources around this, then we're not serving our business well.
I love that part, right? I mean, and you see it. You see it. If you innovate on the fringes, you will get incremental results, and sure. But if you innovate on the core, then the risk is also high. But at the same time, the rewards are astronomically high as well. So it's an asymmetric return on the effort that you put in. I think if we were to merge the find your voice aspect of how you build humanity into finding that voice for Coke, and if you think about the human ingenuity and therefore the human side of ingenuity that you bring towards people and developing them, what are some specific traits you or Coke in general looks for in its talent, specifically the ones that you look for and groom for future leadership?
So let me connect back to the ethos with which so our ethos is building brand, Saquib, as in we believe in this fundamental notion of brand. I'm always asked, so how do we visualize, or how do I visualize a brand? And my definition, and this is stolen from Churchill. Churchill didn't say that about brand. He actually talked about Russia in those words. And the way I explain this is a brand is a promise wrapped in an experience inside a memory. A brand is a promise wrapped in an experience inside a memory. What differentiates a brand from a product is a memory. And therefore, people who understand that idea on how to create, deep, lasting memories. And if you and I visualize any of the great brands, that is common against them. You all carry a memory, and hopefully a positive memory of those brands to come through. Now, when it comes to this, there's a single biggest challenge, Saquib, that I at least come across on most days is it's not that we are unable to find good ideas or great ideas that create memories. It's nurturing those ideas at their very early stage. And I think Johnny Ive said this really, really right, that ideas are very fragile. And you got to protect them, you got to nourish them, you got to figure out how to make them grow, because there's enough winds and there's enough climatic changes that's going to kill them. As we look at our talent portfolio and our talent pipeline, differential on talent who are outstanding versus who are not at that level, one trait that I see is this, that people who are obsessive about finding a great idea and then, being passionate about building it, developing it, and sometimes equally passionate in killing an idea that they develop and realize that, yep, I thought it was something great, but when I progressed on a certain direction, I don't think it's coming through, and I'm going to kill it. And in Coke, I've seen people who have done well versus not in marketing. That has been one very defining trait on that passion and obsession for an absolute no compromise for great ideas.
And I think in some cases, killing an idea that might have been great, when you started working on it, but at the same time, something in the environment changed that compels you to relook at what the options are. So I'm completely with you. I think that's a great one.
Yeah, internal example that we use, and you talked about, you went to the world of Coke. The exhibit that I love the most in World of Coke is the new Coke exhibit.
Yeah.
And I feel very, as there are many things that I'm super proud about the Coca-Cola company, that I feel very proud that the company is able to display its biggest failure right in the public pedestal and tell everyone we messed up. And they have letters, where people have actually abused our chairman and said, "Dear Mr. Dodo, why did you launch this?" And I share this with at least the young people who join us and say that I think, yes, there was boldness in the fact that someone in 1984 decided to change the taste of Coca-Cola, 1985. But I think the courage was not changing the taste of Coke. The courage was realizing after 89 days that it was not the right decision and bringing the classic Coke back. And I think that's for me, that's such a powerful example on, this was an idea, not in terms of killing an idea at an ID stage, but it was launched. It was the most public launch, one of the biggest public launches ever done in history. And for someone to stand up and say, you know what, sorry, didn't work, we're going to change our decision, took a lot of courage. And I think hopefully we have more examples of those.
And I heard something really cool in one of the motivational sort of campaigns, which was failure is not the end. Don't turn it into one.
Yeah.
Right. So anyhow, Shakir, you've had an exciting career. Go back to the time when you and I were both at the IBA. Knowing what you do today, would you do anything differently if you got a chance to retrace your steps and walk on the path again?
Listen, firstly, I've been super blessed. I share this very humbly with a lot of people that I'm a kid from Karachi, man. I, in my wildest imagination, and maybe I had a very poor imagination, but I don't think it was true. But in my wildest imagination, I would not have seen myself in the role that I'm in. So a lot of good luck, a lot of prayers, clearly to get me over here. And in the process, I've had good career experiences. I've stayed with one company for a very, very long time because I was growing with that company. In retrospect, the only thing I would change is two things. One is I loved marketing. That's how I started. And almost for the first 10 plus years of my career, I was in marketing. And then I moved into general management. Then I came back into marketing and did a few other things. I wish I would have got out of marketing earlier to learn other functions faster and sooner, because it made me appreciate the total value chain of the business and the impact of our decisions on what we do that has a much consequential impact on many, many other things. So that would be one. And the second is a very personal thing. As I said, that I've lived in 11 countries with Coke in different roles. And the one country I wish I worked for that country, but I never lived there, was Japan. I wish I could have lived in Japan at least for some time because I love the Japanese ethos of work. I wish I could learn a lot more from the Japanese culture as I built my life and career over the years.
And that sounds like two really good reflections to go with. Do you have any advice for other leaders?
Wow. Listen, I'm still learning, so I don't know how to be in a position to give advice. I try to learn a lot, Saquib, because I'm constantly trying to figure out how to overcome my own frailties and gaps. The things that I come across and I sort of think on, I wish somebody would have I wish somebody would have mentioned that to me earlier or would have educated me on this. Universities, companies put a lot of premium on competence. And I think what we miss is that leadership is competence and character. And yes, character is a base, as in you need it at all times, but character gets increasingly more important as you rise up in position where you're able to influence a lot of other stakeholders and businesses, i.e. leadership. Imagine, like I visualize myself as a young brand manager in Malaysia. Yes, I needed to have good values, uncompromisable, would always be there. But I wasn't impacting humanity as much as I am in my role now. There's a lot of people who look up to me, look at me, look for me when they're looking for things. And they're not looking only for a competent leader. They're looking for someone who's going to take care of them, who's going to help them grow, who's going to nourish them, who's not going to do, hopefully, negative things. And there's a lot of negativity in the world. So I have a test when I'm hiring people. I have two tests when I hire people after all the interviews. The first one is a DNA test, and the second one is a daughter test. So the two Ds. The DNA test is that, am I hiring someone who's better than me? Because if I'm doing that, I am improving the gene pool of the company. And hopefully at some point in time, I would actually if I was to report to that person, I'd be very proud. I hired that person, and I have no shame than reporting to that person. A lot of people pass that because I have a low bar on me. I don't think, finding a better deal is not a problem. The second one, Saquib, I have to tell you, 50% of the people fail. 50%. The daughter test says, would I let my daughter report to that person? Not my son, but my daughter. And that is a question of values. And I look at it and say, well, if I'm not going to let my daughter report to that person, there's no way that I'm going to let any of my team members report to that individual. And I use that test constantly in our current team as well. If we have a talent issue, the first test is this: is it competence or is it character? Competence, everyone has a gap, a lot of forgiveness. Character, no forgiveness. So for me, I think the advice on leadership is, when I look at great leaders, one thing consistent is, I think, those who excel and literally break that cloud is character and not as much as competence.
Yeah, I think the way I hear you articulate that, competence is required but not sufficient.
Yeah.
Character is what makes you break through. And the other thing, I think what you said was, early on in a career, one is required to show character by living it. Once you get rise up the ranks, then it's not just showing character, but other people are aspiring to the character of that individual. So it's aspirational as well. So lovely. That's very cool. This has been a great conversation. Before I sort of end this towards the wrap up side of it, let me know, is there anything that's on your mind that I'd want to give you the space?
Sure, Saquib, and this is not only for this conversation, but every time I have like discussions with my team, any public forum discussion that I have, generally and largely more internally than externally, is it's a quote which is attributed to Socrates, and I'm trying to figure out who eventually said it, because that doesn't matter, but the idea is super powerful. And that idea is that everyone is going through a challenge that you don't know about. Always be kind. In that sort of paradigm of leadership, of character and competence, I think that idea that being kind to people should trump everything else. And most often, as we're going through the flow of the day, flow of the work, someone does something, and we don't know what's happening behind the scenes or in the brain, or what happened the day before or the early morning when this person started. I think it's very important in these days and times to be more generous with everyone in kindness. I think that is, for me, that is key. And that's why, as I said, that in the H and I love the H bit, because if we get that right, the I would flourish. And I hope, and that's why I admire this forum so much, that you bring humanity into Ingenuity.
Generous and kindness is a great and being forgiving is a great place to wrap this up. Thank you again, Shakir, for taking the time and sharing your insights. Our listeners would love to hear more from you. We will tag you in Coca-Cola in our show notes.
Thank you, Saquib.
The Say Hi to the Future podcast series is produced by Sonia Romero, edited by Matt Miller, and special effects by Edward Vasquez. Please leave us your thoughts and let us know if there is a leader you want us to have a conversation with next.